Oh boy. Check, check, 1, 2. We are here. A few minutes late. Oh man, I really thought that this live chat was on the ropes for a moment. I was working through a technical issue, but yeah, we are live. Sorry about the wait. David Eister is in the house. Yeah, I saw the message, and I was trying to communicate while I'm trying to fix plugs in the back of the computer. But yeah, there's a ton to discuss. Yeah, I mean, there are a few places that I want to start, but I kind of want to go down this whole Fury versus Ngannou recap in a sequence that really does the story justice, but also so we can kind of forecast, because this was a bit of a shakeup in the boxing realm. I want to be able to truly highlight some of the key points. Oh yeah, David Eiser, I hope you're enjoying the fights too. And we're also going to get into that O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez fight. That was kind of a slept on, I would say, fight of the year contender, perhaps. That was a fight where, the belt really almost changed hands. Like at the time of the 12th round stoppage, O'Shaquie Foster was down on the cards. He was this close to coughing up the WBC 130-pound title. And I suspected that this was going to be a very difficult fight for Foster. And you saw, there was the smaller ring where the pressuring Rocky Hernandez was able to get Foster backed up into the ropes more than Foster would like to be. Foster was looking for opportunities to land cleanly, but when you've got somebody who's coming head over heels and skillfully too, look at the way that he sets up and feints before he goes into his combinations. Foster was really in for it. This was a 12-rounder, smaller ring in Mexico, so the crowd was going bananas anytime Rocky Hernandez opened up. Through 6 rounds, I really thought that Hernandez was about to come away from the belt, because I didn't think I didn't think that O'Shaquie Foster's power was going to be enough to kind of mitigate the disparity in punch volume. I thought that round over round, it looked like, in the Max Kellerman verbiage, who would you rather be after every round? Well, I would have rather been Rocky Hernandez for most of those rounds. So it really took O'Shaquie Foster to have to really bite down, dig deep, and to, score a 12th round knockout. That 11th round, as they were saying on the broadcast, I thought was one of the rounds of the year. That was scintillating. Just the back and forth. There were times in that 11th round where you thought either fighter was about to be stopped. There were times where it looked like Foster was about to stop Hernandez and vice versa. Stan Tucker is in the house. What's up, Dad? What's going on? Jay Foreman, what's good? Heck yeah, Jay Foreman's you're like one of my day ones with this channel, man. And anytime I see your name pop up on, after I drop a preview or anything like that, I always know that it's going to be something insightful in the comments. Heck yeah, thank you for coming through. But yeah, if anybody has not seen O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez, please check that out. It's on DAZN. I don't know if they've already released it to YouTube. My guess is that if you see it on YouTube, it's going to be either, some BC level video where they kind of do different things to manipulate the digital signature so YouTube doesn't wipe the fight. I don't know, but that was a fantastic fight, and it came later on, obviously, on the same day as Fury and Ngannou. But why don't we just why don't we jump right into Fury and Ngannou? Let me please take a sip from tea. Like I said, I had a little bit of a hectic moment trying to start the live chat. We're a few minutes late, and I was messing with cords in the back of the computer, but we're here. So cheers. I hope everybody's week is off to a fantastic start. All right. Fury versus Ngannou. I don't think anybody got this one right. I don't think anybody got this right. From the experts to the fans to any YouTube channels, I didn't see anybody say that. And look, I saw some people say he's got a puncher's chance, which is what we knew. Okay, it's the heavyweight division. These are all big dudes throwing shots at each other. Anything could happen. And I think it was Paulie Malignaggi who said Ngannou's best chance might to just be close your eyes and throw some punches. You know what I mean? Close your eyes and try to land something. But nobody thought that round over round over round, that you were going to walk away from each of these rounds like, I think Fury, I don't know who got that round. Nobody knew that this minute over minute was going to be this damn competitive. And I really want to kind of dissect what the heck we just witnessed. Because I'm still trying to process, what we saw in that 30 minutes of action. This was a 10-rounder. So I thought, if nothing else, even if Francis was to have early round success, that he was going to totally just fizzle out and just, the amateur nature is going to show. And then in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, Fury's just going to clean him up, because, when you start getting tired, you start losing the different things that you have to consciously think about. Like when you are doing any sort of an activity, whether you're playing basketball, whether you're boxing, whether you're running, whatever you're doing that requires some skill and a lot of endurance, and you start really fatiguing, that skill more or less goes out the window. You start doing what you need to do for your body to just get through the strenuous nature of the fight. So I thought that, any little bit of technique that Ngannou was using early, it was going to be out of the window, and he was going to resort to, one, his volume was going to greatly reduce, which it did. It did in those, especially in the 9th and 10th round, which is where I think Fury secured the fight, even though I actually gave Ngannou the 10th round. I had it 95-94 or whatever that scorecard was that has Fury up by 1 point. I basically had Fury winning 6 of the 10 rounds. And the ones that I gave to Ngannou was the 2nd round, but that was close, a swing round, as was the first. First was a swing round too, but I give it to Fury. 3rd round, you obviously have to give Ngannou the 10-8 round. Beautiful check hook too. It wasn't like he threw like a looping shot. He threw a well-timed left hook that was a counter to Tyson Fury's right hand. Who saw that coming, right? But also just his way of being able to subtly hop in and out of range, to where when Tyson Fury is trying to establish a jab, he's trying to feint his way in. And, some people thought that his feints were a little bit clumsy, or they look, that wasn't the best version of Tyson Fury, but you did see him applying a lot of his go-tos in the fights that we've seen in the past. We saw him against Derek Chisora in their 2nd fight, Otto Wallin, Deontay Wilder in their 2nd and 3rd fights. We saw Fury come forward and start leaning. So when plan A, when the distance game doesn't work and you don't feel comfortable throwing at range against Ngannou, Fury probably thought that, okay, this isn't working unexpectedly, but it's not working. Let me go in on him. Let me physically bully him and then win that way. Just wear on his oxygen, wear on his gas tank, and move him around the ring. Francis Ngannou just wasn't having that, right? So plan A wasn't working. Plan B wasn't working. So then you got a reluctant Tyson Fury standing on the outside, switching stances. That multiple times, switching stances. So you're really thinking, what the hell is going on here? By the way, by that 3rd round knockout, all bets were off. All bets were off. That was one of the more shocking moments I've ever seen in the boxing ring. Let me see. Let me get to some of what you're saying. David Iser thinks that Ngannou could beat some of the top heavyweights because of his chin. He also, yes, he did show a fantastic chin, because you saw Tyson Fury start to sit on some of those right hands. He was throwing that straight drill of a right hand, and most of the time he would miss it by this much. Francis Ngannou, all things considered, was a very good defensive fighter. Even when his mouth was open and he was visibly tiring, yes, he did eat some of those jabs from distance. Yes, he did eat some of those right hands, but he never really caught the full brunt of the right hand, like the type of right hand that sank Deontay Wilder the first time in that 2nd fight. Remember when Tyson Fury threw kind of like a 1-2, and then Wilder was like near the ropes, and then he kind of got dropped upside the head? You didn't see Ngannou hit with the best of Fury's shots, but I look at that as a testament to Ngannou's game plan. Like Dewey Cooper, a lot of people were wondering, who's the guy with the dreads? That's not Mike Tyson. Clearly not Mike Tyson. In fact, I don't think I saw one word of advice between rounds from Mike Tyson? Well, Dewey Cooper, former kickboxer, boxer, mixed martial artist to a degree, a multi-disciplined fighter, basically, is Francis Ngannou's main striking coach. That's who you heard administering most of the instruction. That's who you saw in the press conference talking the most trash, really, to Tyson Fury and his dad, John Fury, Dewey Cooper. And I think that he should be credited big time with that strategy going in. Again, it just astounds me how poised Ngannou was when he was boxing Fury at range. And, you saw his defense. Instead of doing like one of these, high guards, which I usually expect a lot of inexperienced fighters to resort to, because usually if an inexperienced fighter has their hands anywhere but right here, they're getting caught with the right hand or something mean from distance. So if a fighter is doing this type of thing where their hands are out here, they'll just catch a right hand over the top. But what Francis was doing, whether he was in the southpaw stance or orthodox, he was able to keep his hands out here and kind of knock down Fury's jab. I really don't think Fury anticipated his jab getting swatted down by Ngannou. And sometimes if a guy is good enough to swat your jab down, then you start throwing that lead hand out as a decoy and you put something on top of it. But Fury became gun shy because not only was Ngannou able to knock some of those jabs down, which, Fury's not used to, just like he's not used to getting met physically and getting equaled physically in the clinch. You could tell that was foreign to him. He was trying his roughhouse tactics. You even saw Ngannou kind of say, "Get off me," when he kind of jostled Fury's shoulder and arm off of him. But once Ngannou started to knock the jab hand down, Fury was worried about that check left hook. So Ngannou doesn't only have a mean right hand that's his signature punch. That's what he was really looking to land. That left hook that dropped Fury, that was plan B. That was in case he advances, be ready to throw this well-timed hook. I don't think anybody saw this set of skills that Francis Ngannou showed us over the course of 10 rounds against Tyson Fury. It's just amazing how uneventful the 9th and the 10th were after Ngannou had his biggest non-knockdown round in the 8th round. He was putting it on Fury with several punches in that 8th round. And yes, I gave Fury an edge in the 9th round, but one of those by the skin of his teeth, which the 9th and 10th round, you would expect the class of Tyson Fury to take over and shine through, especially when you got a very tired Francis Ngannou. We never got that moment. At no moment of this fight did I look at Francis Ngannou and see a complete amateur against an A-level elite pro. And I don't know if I will ever come to grips with that. I've never seen that before. Even with Floyd Mayweather versus McGregor, I didn't see Floyd met class-wise. He did get hit with a couple counter uppercuts. he did get hit with some nice shots. I don't want to downplay what McGregor did against Floyd for as long as the fight lasted. Carmen Serena's in the house. Heck yeah! Thank you for coming through. You made it. Yes. Adari Pennant. Thank you for coming through. If I was to answer your question about Francis Ngannou versus Zhilei Zhang, I would still favor Zhilei Zhang over Ngannou. I would favor Anthony Joshua over Ngannou. And by the way, for anybody, and a lot of people were suggesting that Ngannou got robbed. Ngannou didn't get robbed in this fight. I can't see giving Ngannou the fight round over round. Again, it's close and there's some swing rounds. So I guess you could argue, if you're being absolutely as generous as possible, giving Ngannou some of that. EK, I see you. Thank you for coming through. Edward Espinoza is in the house. You would have to be as generous towards Ngannou as you can to find 6 rounds to give, or even 5 rounds where then the knockdown would be the difference, to give the edge to Ngannou. You'd have to be extreme, because it wasn't the 4th, 5th, or 6th after the knockdown. Fury won those 3 rounds. 7th round was a close round, but I edged it to Fury. I gave Francis the 8th. That was a clear round. That was the clearest non-knockdown round, in my opinion, in that entire fight, that 8th round for Ngannou. And then the 9th I gave to Fury, 10th I gave to Ngannou. And then I gave the 2nd to Ngannou. But let's see. I would still favor Anthony Joshua over Ngannou. I would probably favor Deontay Wilder over Ngannou, even though my cousin, Benjamin Tucker, who's often in this chat, I was talking to him the night of the fight, later on that same night, and he's like, hey, Woog, to keep it real with you, like, Ngannou showed me more skill development than Deontay Wilder has. And I thought about arguing with it because, I mean, it's my inclination to debate back, but I was thinking about it. I'm like, damn, you're right, man. I can't really argue with that. In terms of skill for skill, like, to me, look, besides that right hand, I don't know what Deontay Wilder's distinct advantage is technically over Francis Ngannou. Maybe his late fight power, maybe the timing on his right, but I don't know. But I would favor Deontay Wilder just because I feel like to not favor Deontay Wilder would be a little bit of it sounds insane in a boxing fight. It sounds insane, but all of these top boxers from Usyk to Zhilei Zhang to, I mean, look, if Ngannou was to fight Demirizin, that's the last guy to stop Adam Kownacki, who's lost to, I believe Demirizin has lost to Efe Ajagba. But if Ajagba were to fight, which, by the way, Ajagba fights this weekend, if he were to fight Francis Ngannou, I would think heavily about favoring Ajagba. I would. I don't know if I would favor Joe Joyce over Ngannou, but I don't know. Joe, if he still has that chin, I don't know. It's hard to really gauge Joe Joyce at this moment. But before he lost, if Joe Joyce had just beaten Joseph Parker in the stoppage way that he did, by the way, Joseph Parker looked pretty good against Simon Keane that same weekend on that same Fury Ngannou undercard. But I would have favored Joe Joyce over what I just saw with Efe Ajagba, because I do think that there was a big underestimation and lack of preparation for Tyson Fury. Like I said, he was either greatly underprepared or he's greatly over the hill. One or the other, underprepared or over the hill. But I would still favor these B+, A- level boxers over Francis Ngannou. But that doesn't take away from how much he impressed me throughout those 10 rounds against Tyson Fury. He fought Fury way more competitive than Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora did. You know, I would have favored before before this past weekend, I would have easily favored Derek Chisora. I was talking with my family, my dad, my brother, and so forth. I was saying, if Ngannou was to fight Derek Chisora, who would you favor? And we all just kind of laughed and said at the same time, Chisora. Like, are you kidding me? Chisora. It was like that. Dillian Whyte against, Ngannou. I think Dillian Whyte should still win it, but Ngannou's adaptability, his willingness to take instructions, his willingness to learn on the job, learn on the fly, and to skill build overnight. Like, this guy didn't grow up a mixed martial artist in any way. He really didn't. And I saw his fight-by-fight trajectory in the UFC. Like, I saw when he lost via embarrassing decision to Stipe, where, I mean, Ngannou looked like he was about to pass out walking back to the corner, the way that he was being out-wrestled by Stipe Miocic in that first fight. We saw what he did to Stipe in that rematch. Upheaval 963 is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Salute. But yeah, Ngannou, his ability to skill build, to adapt and to learn, I'm not going to underestimate that anymore. You know, the one talking head, I'll give it to him, who did suggest that Ngannou might be competitive against Tyson Fury? It was Teddy Atlas. Because Teddy Atlas said, and I don't agree with everything Teddy Atlas says on that show. I do watch the show and I like it a lot, but I don't agree with everything he says. But he said that he trained Ngannou for like a day or two. But he saw how quickly Ngannou was able to pick up instruction and start executing it on the fly. And he said that coupled with his explosive, extraordinary power and his raw athleticism, that he might be formidable against an potentially underprepared Tyson Fury. So yeah, that was the closest to getting it right that I personally saw. Let's see. I want to get to some of what you're saying. EK said, I hate that fight. Made boxing look like a joke. Tyson made boxing look like a joke. You know, Tyson's underpreparedness did leave a lot to be desired. And did you see that they have announced that they are moving the Fury versus Usyk Battle for Undisputed to February? So they were discussing December, right? That was supposed to be the date. I forgot exactly what the date was in December, but it was in December. And now they are moving it to February, which, you know, I can't be mad at that. I feel like that's totally reasonable. I thought that under the conditions that Fury beat Ngannou in the way that most of us thought that he would beat Ngannou, probably unscathed and not knocked down, not taken to a split decision, that they might have stuck to that December date. But given what we saw, you know, I mean, just a slight abrasion to Fury's head, and he took some shots. He got dropped, and he got kind of beaten up in the 8th round a little bit. And well, look, when I say a little bit, how can I say a little bit when the guy took several shots from Francis Ngannou? Did you see what Francis Ngannou did to Alistair Overeem with the uppercut in the UFC? He is probably the hardest puncher in mixed martial arts history. And I've been watching the UFC religiously since like UFC 2 or 3 when Hoist Gracie was beating Ken Shamrock and stuff like that. Back in the Tank Abbott days, Dan Severn, people like that. But he's the hardest puncher I've ever seen in the UFC. The only other guys in the conversation might be Anthony Rumble Johnson, rest in peace. Rumble Johnson was one of those punchers. Chuck Liddell, the Iceman to a degree. Conor McGregor for a moment when he was at 145, not at 155 or 170, 145 Conor McGregor. It's a short list, but Ngannou punched for the Black Beast. Derek Lewis is another one of them. But Francis Ngannou is probably the hardest puncher in mixed martial arts history. Fedor Emelianenko's got to be up there too. But Tyson Fury moving this fight to February, I don't have a problem with that at all, given what we just saw. And if Tyson Fury needs to get his mind right, he needs to get in shape. And, you know, if you think about what this fight against Ngannou means for boxing, or I'm sorry, means for his fight against Usyk, I'm almost hesitant to say that we could extrapolate a lot from this fight as it pertains to Fury versus Usyk. Aside from Fury better get back on his game, period. Whatever he lost between his last couple fights and this fight against Ngannou, he needs to get that back. He needs to get his timing back. He needs to get his endurance back. He needs to get back on his game. Aside from just that and Tyson Fury getting right, the reason I can't say, okay, we saw that from Ngannou, an amateur first professional fight, which still sounds absolutely nuts, right? That still sounds crazy. Is because it's a totally different matchup. The attributes that Ngannou brought into the ring, as amateur as he was, there's no amount of training and technique and skill building that Alexander Usyk can do to become as strong as Ngannou, as big as Ngannou, as hard-hitting as Ngannou. And by the way, another reason I thought Ngannou might get straight dusted by Fury is because in his last MMA fight, he was against Cyril Gane, where Cyril Gane out-kickboxed him for the couple of rounds before Ngannou started taking Cyril Gane down. He had to win that fight against Gane grappling. He didn't even win that doing with his bread and butter in the stand-up. Gane got the better of Ngannou in the stand-up in that's the last Francis Ngannou MMA fight to date. So I'm thinking, damn, like he doesn't have much of a chance against Fury. Coming back from a knee surgery? Yeah, but he showed us different, right? But Ngannou does bring a special set of just outright ability. Like if he grew up boxing, he would undoubtedly be a boxing heavyweight champion. I mean, let me know if any of y'all disagree with that. If the man that is Francis Ngannou was a boxer instead of an MMA fighter and had been training strictly boxing all this time, I would favor him against a lot of the guys that we're discussing right now. Straight up, like just based on the, again, adaptability, ability to learn, all that. but because of the physical properties, the physical attributes. You can't coach that. You're either born with that or you ain't got it. But it became abundantly clear in his MMA career that, yeah, this guy's a little bit different. He's raw. He needs to learn, but he's got something special. He's got a few things special to bring into the cage with him. And you know what? With Fury versus Ngannou, it didn't take for the knockdown for me to be blown away. I was on the edge of my seat and shocked by the end of the first round. I was confused. I was watching the fight with, you might see him in the comments in a lot of these chats, Sup Swoles. I was watching the fight. He was sitting literally right here, and we were watching the fight. And by the end of the first round, I'm thinking, like, is Tyson Fury just... I almost gave him like a 1-round mulligan. Like, okay, he's just kind of figuring things out, seeing what type of awkwardness Francis Ngannou's going to bring into the ring, and then he's going to adapt and do his thing from rounds 2, 3 onward, right? Round 2, nope, not at all. And then round 3, before he got dropped in that round, Francis Ngannou was already winning that round. It's not like Fury was winning the round until he got dropped. No, Ngannou was getting the better of Fury in the third round prior to the knockdown, which just made everything that much crazier. So I was impressed and blown away in this fight early. And after the fight, Tyson Fury wants to say that it was Ngannou's awkwardness. You know, I look at that as kind of being a cop-out. It's like, nah, he actually didn't look very awkward. Like, I've seen a lot of MMA fighters switch to boxing and look awkward as hell. Not Francis Ngannou. Again, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that one of these guys was a complete non-boxer. Let me know if you disagree with that. I wouldn't have been able to tell without knowing these guys' pedigree, without knowing their history. You know, again, Ngannou's hands were out here, but he was knocking down jabs, and he was feinting. I even saw him throw some right hands to Tyson Fury's chest area. That's how I knew, like, man, this guy's done he's done some studying. He's done real preparation for this one. So, yeah, it didn't take for the knockdown for me to be blown away in this one. Let's see. EK said Chisora at 5,000 loses, though. You know, Chisora, maybe the version of Chisora that fought Vitaly Klitschko way back in the day. Or even the Derek Chisora who got knocked out by Dillian White. Maybe he beats Ngannou, but maybe not. You know, I'm close to done kind of counting Ngannou out. Like, if he, first of all, you know, let's talk about what's next for Ngannou. Like, everybody wants Ngannou right now. Eddie Hearn is like head over heels trying to get this fight with Anthony Joshua and Ngannou going. Deontay Wilder's reps, they came out saying, yeah, we're in talks with Francis Ngannou. So Ngannou went from being like a one-off, hey, let's just get this thing over with so boxing can carry on, to everybody wanting to see Francis Ngannou fight all of these like A-level fighters. Now, some people don't want it, like my brother. He thinks that this whole thing is a disgrace, and he's saying, no, let Deontay Wilder fight Anthony Joshua, let Tyson Fury fight Alexander Usyk, and let's get on with this. Like, this was a sideshow. But I'm trying to say, like, I mean, yeah, it was a sideshow, but boy, was that one hell of a show. And it was more, again, it was more than a puncher's chance. Look, put it like this. F.A. Ajagba, when I saw him fight, like, you know, Frank Sanchez, and you know, Frank Sanchez might be able to beat Francis Ngannou straight up. But F.A. Ajagba struck me as a bit of a stiff. You know what I mean? Like, okay, he's, you know, learning this jab, right hand, jab, right, wait for the right time, throw the right hand. But he looked pretty stiff. I thought that there was more fluidity. Now, I think Ajagba has, you know, improved, like, especially in his last, like, 2 or 3 fights against Stephen Shaw and against Kasabutsky, before, with all those low blows. You see the skill development with F.A. Ajagba. But in terms of when F.A. Ajagba was a little greener, I saw more fluidity in Francis Ngannou's style. He seemed more ready to counterpunch. He seemed more ready to adapt on the fly. And I do think that there's something to be said about the skills that some of these fighters are picking up in the UFC and how that is portable or transferable into the boxing ring. Everything from stance switching. If you watch a lot of these UFC fights, you'll see how frequently the fighters move from orthodox to southpaw all the time. A lot of fighters do. It's not even like oh, he just did that. Ooh, he just switched to southpaw. No, it's a part of the kind of the baseline skill set for a lot of these MMA fighters. But also, when you look at the lack of success that Tyson Fury was having in the clinch, where Tyson Fury tried to pull Ngannou in, a lot of the stuff that he was doing with Wilder and different fighters, Otto Wallin, what did you see Ngannou do? He started to rip some uppercuts up the middle during the clinch, and he stood his ground 100%. Because he's also 270 pounds, close to Tyson Fury's weight. So a physical advantage that Fury's used to, he didn't have there. But yeah, everything from stance switching to fighting out of the clinch and engaging in the clinch, these were actually some MMA skills that I thought were very transferable. Let me get to a little bit of what you're saying. It's yeah, Jay Foreman, it wasn't just a lucky shot from Ngannou. He was doing his thing. He was doing things, switching stances. And yeah, Fury switching stances. I did see that as a sign, if not flat out desperation, at least let's see if we can figure this out. But you could see Tyson Fury's face going back to the corner. And when he was sitting back down, you could tell that he was he was not having his way from the first to the 10th round. He never got it figured out. He edged this by throwing some unanswered jabs when Francis Ngannou was at his most fatigued. But, I mean, you saw like in the first 3 seconds, Fury tried to land a bomb of a right hand as soon as the fight started. That in itself had me on the edge of a seat. I'm like, oh, he's trying to get him out of there early. But then little by little, you started seeing like, wait, Francis is ready for some of this stuff. And not only that, he didn't keep his head on the center line. You see a lot of pros who've been in the game for years who keep their head on the center line for majority of the fight, and they are there to be hit. Joe Joyce, that's the easiest example. But Francis Ngannou wasn't here. Francis Ngannou was like, he was here, he would lean, kind of change levels that way, lean off to the side a little bit, and he would back up, and his feet would be just outside of range enough where you're not eating jabs the whole fight. And then when he wanted to close the distance, his feet got in there. When Tyson Fury would take a step back or lean back, you would see Ngannou start to close the gap, but at an angle to where he would then throw that right hand. And I swear, I still don't think he didn't get the full impact of that right hand. Fury was leaning just enough, just out of the way enough to where Ngannou was kind of catching him with the end of the punch. Not full impact, but he was right there. He was right there. And that in itself, again, it's going to take me a long time to get over this one. Let's see. Yeah, Edward Espinoza. Yeah, of course. MMA rules Francis Ngannou's finishing Fury when Fury hits the floor. Because Fury hit the floor and he had that, I forgot who pointed it out, but it was that Curtis Stevens look on his face, that when Curtis Stevens fought Triple G and got knocked down for the first time. And I agree. Adari Pennant, Francis Ngannou should stay in boxing. You know, one of my homeboys, George, he was saying that, PFL, because, Francis Ngannou's got the PFL deal, that Francis Ngannou's probably going to fight in the PFL next. I'm like, how do you even market Francis Ngannou in an MMA fight after this against a no-name in the PFL? And I know that Ngannou has some stake in the actual company of the PFL. They gave him a sweet deal. He gets to start his own sub leagues. Like he gets to start PFL Africa and so forth under the PFL banner. They really sweetened the deal for him. But I'm like, all of this kind of is subject to change because everybody, from the boxing promoters to the PFL to the Saudis, everybody thought this is a cash out and Ngannou's going to take his whooping and then keep it moving, probably with the PFL to fulfill everything that he wanted to do there. But his performance over Fury turns everything, in my view, upside down on its head. So you see, Eddie Hearn, super interested. You see Frank Warren talking like, yeah, we're going to try to work with Francis Ngannou again, ASAP. Like, we're going to do another fight down the line, probably after the battle for Undisputed. I don't know. But everybody's looking at Francis Ngannou right now with dollar signs, in their eyes. And Francis Ngannou is probably right now looking at the opportunities that he has today that he didn't have before this past weekend. And that alters his view of what's possible. So yeah, now you can discuss him versus Wilder, Joshua, you name it. It's all possible. In fact, some were suggesting if you see Tyson Fury start to BS with making the fight against Usyk on the heels of this, Ngannou could probably pivot and stage a fight with Alexander Usyk. It might or might not be as most lucrative depending on how you sell it. But that was like a potential option if Fury started to BS in negotiations like it looked like he had prior to this Fury versus Ngannou fight. Let's see. David Iser said, let me see. Oh, another dude that people are high on is Moses Itama. He's a hype job. Yeah, the undercard. Well, other fights that were on the Fury versus Ngannou undercard. You saw Fabio Wardley stop Adalaye. I had the pronunciation down. Adalaye. We saw that. We saw Makhmudov stop his opponent in the first round. We saw Martin Bakole stop Carlos Takam with the body shot, basically. Well, that was the beginning of the end. So there are a lot of heavyweights that are making the division very interesting right now. But yeah, even if you look at like Martin Bakole, I think that he could potentially be favored against a Francis Ngannou. Although usually when something like this last weekend happens, you see the market start to overcorrect to where, the Ngannou versus Deontay Wilder odds might be near even because people start to exaggerate the other way. They say, oh, I had it way wrong this way. No, let's swing the pendulum all the way back this way. But I'm saying like Ngannou could fight a C-level boxer in his next fight and maybe lose. That's possible. Let's see. Yeah, El People 963 said Fury needs to outweigh you by 50 pounds and lean on you and wear you down. So maybe the fight means nothing if as it pertains to Usyk. Yeah, I do. It's a totally different can of worms, but or ball of wax or whatever parallel you want to draw. But it's a different type of pressure that Usyk puts on you. Like I did like Ngannou's style of pressure to where he was always like one step away from being able to let something go. So Fury never truly got to relax in there. And he looked confused. Fury looked confused for like over half the fight. But what Usyk does is he kind of stays, he's like a little wasp in there, right? Or like a drone where he's changing levels, he's doing different things. Actually right here, he's probing with this hand, pop. And so he's not like a in your chest, that type of pressure, throw a lot of punches and just rumble, right? He's not that. But he's like right here to where you're always under mental duress because at any moment he could let a jab go. He could let a straight left go because his feet are always in position to make a move. It doesn't always mean that he's always going to be making a move, but he's always getting you to react, to think about something, to have to worry about something. That's one of the reasons I think Daniel Dubois wasn't able to let his hands go as much as he wanted to or as much as he should have, And not to mention the gas tank. And Usyk is extremely well conditioned. Here's one thing though, with Fury versus Ngannou, one thing that I think Ngannou started to do after the second round was he didn't go to Fury's body as much. He went to his body a little bit in the first and second round. I think he went to his body in the first round. And I saw Fury adjust his belt line, kind of take a deep breath, give Ngannou a look, and kind of walk away kind of strangely, right? And I'm like, oh, he didn't like that one punch to the body. But I feel like after the knockdown, Ngannou started to do a little bit of head hunting. I mean, he was never reckless. He was always composed. And again, that blew me away. His poise, his composure, his ability to kind of stick to the game plan. And when he does attack, stay defensively responsible. But Fury didn't like it to the body, but he stopped getting hit in the body. I remember Otto Wallin early in their fight bothering Fury to the body. But when Otto Wallin opened up that cut on Fury, he abandoned the body and he started to target the eye and to headhunt, that was gravy for Fury. You know what I mean? Because then he was able to implement his game plan without getting hit to the body. We saw Fury get hurt to the body in those multiple instances. We saw Usyk obviously get hurt to the body against Dubois, both with the knockdown and other punches where he kept on looking to the ref, trying to get some intervention. But, Usyk totally didn't like it to the body. So I suspect that Fury's skill set and his physical attributes are still going to end up being too much for Usyk. I think he's going to wear on Usyk's 35, 36-year-old, body, his legs. And if Fury's in shape and if Fury's really, really locked in and ready to go, I would still make Fury at least a 2-1 favorite over Usyk. I think that he knows what's at stake. He knows how embarrassed he is after this fight against, Francis Ngannou. He knows what everybody's saying. I mean, just like after the first fight with Deontay Wilder, you remember how motivated and just determined. I mean, that fight, that style of Tyson Fury, that version of Tyson Fury in the second fight against Wilder, that might be the best version of Tyson Fury I've ever seen. Yes, he was a bit heavier, but you saw how good his timing was from the outside. That wasn't the Tyson Fury we just got against Francis Ngannou. Let's see. Jay Foreman said, although it wasn't a good look for boxing, Dana and the UFC were the biggest losers on Saturday. Yeah. They were big losers. I feel like everybody who wasn't a part of this night, though, were big losers. But Dana White, look, of course he didn't think that Francis Ngannou was going to have the type of night that he had against Fury. But the business model of the UFC is such that cutting the person who wants to get paid too much and doesn't want to play ball with the company, it makes more business sense for the company because they got front-loaded the money by Disney, right? They got the huge, outflow, or inflow of cash to where they just had to populate their schedule and to keep it moving. So they are less reliant on having a Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey level superstar these days than they were in those days. They don't need the star. They just need to keep on scheduling fights. And, Dana White's got his Contender Series, which is kind of serving as the next farm system, the next minor leagues to then graduate to the UFC. And there you go. You populate you populate the ranks in each division with these guys who now may or may not be the best guys in the world. I feel like the way that they're running their business model now, it gives them less of a talent. They used to own like 80% of the talent, of the top tier talent. I mean, Bellator, it looks like they're about to go under unless they get purchased by the PFL, which PFL is now in talks again to purchase PFL to purchase Bellator. But I feel like now it's a little bit closer to even because of the way that the UFC is conducting their business. All that to say, yes, the UFC and Dana White were losers in that they didn't partake or have any stake in this historic combat sports night, but it still works out for their business to just continue to conduct business in the way that they have. That's how I see that. But you're right. Dana White was not feeling good seeing all the shine that Francis Ngannou, who was one of the only people to kind of beat the UFC litigation-wise and to get, freed up from the company under his terms. He's had more success in doing that than any UFC fighter I've seen try to do it in the past. McGregor tried to flex his weight with the UFC. Back in the day, it was Randy Couture. Didn't work out for Randy. It pretty much ended his MMA career. But Ngannou won against the UFC, and then he won the night, not the fight, but the night. We everybody's saying that against Tyson Fury. Let's see. Yeah, David Iser, I saw that they're making switching to 130, Rakhimov versus Nunez, title eliminator. So let me see. I just want to make sure I didn't leave any meat on the bone talking Fury versus Ngannou. Not a robbery. Fury versus Usyk pushed to February. What does this mean for Fury and Usyk? Well, it looks like, well, again, I think that that's its own fight because styles make fights. And then what's next for Francis? I suspect boxing. I suspect boxing and a lot of money is next for Francis. MAW is in the house. Yeah, thank you. Please smash that like button. Heck yeah. Thank you, MAW. I hope you guys saw O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez. This was a tremendous fight later on in the same night. It was for O'Shaquie Foster's 130-pound super featherweight WBC belt. And I thought that O'Shaquie Foster was going to edge a decision, but I would not have been surprised if Rocky Hernandez won a decision against O'Shaquie Foster because it was going to be a smaller ring. It was going to be in Mexico. It was going to be kind of a pressure fighter against somebody who's looking to land the clean shots between shots and manage range and distance and all that. I thought O'Shaquie Foster was going to be up against it, and he truly was. 2/3 of the way into the fight, I thought Rocky Hernandez was going to win that fight, and even at the time of the stoppage, Rocky Hernandez was up on the scorecard, so it required O'Shaquie Foster, I wouldn't say pull a rabbit out of his hat, but to fight to the bitter end and to win in a way that where even people who thought O'Shaquie Foster, who was a slight betting favorite, the fact that he was only a slight favorite tells you how competitive the public thought Rocky Hernandez was going to be against Foster, which he was. But those who thought Foster was going to win thought that he was going to win probably via decision. So him getting a knockout win in the 12th round, that's exactly what his career needed. So look, some champions I like to call belt holders. This makes him a champion in my book. No, it's not a perfect system. Yes, there are 4 belts in every division, but not every belt holder is a champion. But when you look at O'Shaquie Foster having beat Yakubov, who I believe his only loss is against O'Shaquie Foster. Good fighter, Yakubov. I expect him to be have some success in the future. And he's won a few fights, all by knockout, since fighting O'Shaquie Foster. And he got dropped in that last round against Foster too. But Foster beat Yakubov. He beat Ray Vargas. Granted, it was former 122-pound champ, former 126-pound champ, Ray Vargas, fighting his 130-pound debut after beating Mark Magsayo to capture that 126-pound title just before that. But Ray Vargas is a really good fighter. He was undefeated. That is Ray Vargas's only loss. So Foster gave Yakubov his first loss. He gave Ray Vargas his first loss. And then he just gave Rocky Hernandez his second loss. Roger Gutierrez gave Rocky Hernandez his first loss. But yeah, with that type of fight by fight winning, that type of schedule, and then defending your title, winning in a 12th round knockout, you know who else did that? Lee Wood in his first title defense after beating Zhu Can. His first title defense was against Michael Conlan, and he scored a 12th round. I've got to rally back into the fight knockout over Michael Conlan, which I still see as being the fight of the year for 2022. So, this coming weekend is Joe Cordina, the 130-pound IBF champ, who won that title by beating Kenichi Ogawa via stunning knockout early in the fight. Those who thought Cordina was going to beat Ogawa thought that Ogawa was the puncher, Cordina was the boxer, and that if Cordina was going to win, he was going to outpoint him. But no, he put Ogawa's lights out to earn the title, and then he defended it successfully against Shavkat Rakhimov. So Cordina is better than I thought he was. He fights this weekend defending his IBF title for the second time, this time against Edward Vasquez. And if Cordina beats Vasquez, which this is going to be a good fight, Edward Vasquez, you might remember, you know, Raymond Ford, right? He fights on a lot of the matchroom cards on the undercards. He's a 130-pound fighter. He's about 5'7", kind of a smooth fighter, but he's in this whole crop of really young fighters. He's just one of the guys who's not on Top Rank. Top Rank has a lot of those guys, right? I'm just saying, like, the really young, just hot prospects. Excuse me. Top Rank has Keyshawn Davis, Troy Isley, Abdullah. What's the kid's name? Abdullah, with the super fast hands, who's going to be fighting pretty soon too. Abdullah Mason, Xander Zayas. I know, who's got Matchroom's got Diego Pacheco, another very good prospect. I like Diego Pacheco a lot. Like, a lot of people are hot on David Morrell Jr. with good reason, but I look at David Pacheco like, hey, keep your eye on this guy too. But Raymond Ford is a good matchroom fighter at 130, still undefeated, but he fought Edward Vasquez. Raymond Ford was supposed to kind of have his way with him, right? He was the favorite. He was the kind of shiny new name where it's like, oh yeah, he's destined for greatness. Look, with my own two eyes, I saw Edward Vasquez beat Raymond Ford straight up. That to me was that was knocking on the doors of robbery, straight up. And I don't use that term lightly. Usually with a lot of these, fight could go either way, and this guy got it instead of this guy. Not a robbery. But when I was watching Raymond Ford versus Edward Vasquez, like, live, I'm like, Raymond Ford lost that fight. And then they announced that he won the fight, I believe via a split. I think it was a split decision. But yeah, justice was not served in the ring. Yeah, it was a split decision. Raymond Ford won that fight against Edward Vasquez, and that's Vasquez's only loss. So in my view, Edward Vasquez hasn't lost a fight. He lost technically to Raymond Ford, but I saw him beat Raymond Ford, or at the worst, a draw. So Edward Vasquez is going to be challenging Joe Cordina for the 130-pound super featherweight IBF belt. Joe Cordina is rightfully the favorite, but hey, when it comes to a lot of these lesser name but pretty damn good opponents, I don't take them lightly. You know, just like what did we see a couple weekends ago? We saw Alexis Rocha get beaten by Giovanni Santillan, get knocked out, beaten up, and then knocked out by Giovanni Santillan. And then we just, obviously saw Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury, but we also just saw Oshaki Foster versus Eduardo Rocky Hernandez. Don't sleep on these quality B-sides. These quality, maybe I haven't beaten a big name yet, but I'm doing work over here. You might be doing your thing, collecting that shiny title over there. I'm doing work over here. I try not to sleep on those guys, and I try to really look at the fight like in a vacuum. I really look at the matchups, and I see what that B-side is bringing to the table. And Edward Vasquez, unlike Rocky Hernandez, who is a power puncher, who is a combination puncher, who comes in on you and throws a lot of tricky but heavy artillery, Edward Vasquez is a bit slicker of a fighter, a bit smoother of a counterpuncher than Rocky Hernandez. So completely different style. Like Rocky Hernandez going into that title challenge against Oshaki Foster, 31 of his 34 wins came via knockout. I repeat, 31 of his 34 wins for Rocky Hernandez, who narrowly lost by knockout against Oshaki Foster. That was his knockout ratio. Edward Vasquez only has 3 knockouts out of his 15 wins. So he's not a super heavy puncher at all, but he's a good technical boxer. So that's what Joe Cordina is going to be challenged with this coming weekend. Let me get to what some of you guys are saying. David Eister, he said, Michael Conlan is not good though, and neither is Mauricio Lara. Lee Wood is getting old. I understand that, but when you stop to think about it, he's ruining 2 weight classes. Lee Wood is? Look, I look at Lee Wood as being I look at him as being a treasure to boxing, just in terms of the heart that we see him bring into the ring, fight over fight. You just don't know what you're going to get with the Lee Wood fight, but you do know that he's probably going to come out on top. Yes, he got knocked out against Mauricio Lara, but he didn't have to take that rematch against Lara. When Lara blew weight by like a few pounds, Lee Wood took that challenge and then outboxed Lara throughout the duration of the fight, took him to school. Then he knocked out Josh Warrington. Before that, he had those back-to-back stoppage wins over Zhu Can. So when Lee Wood won the title, he stopped Zhu Can. It wasn't a decision win. And I think that was a 12th round stoppage over Zhu Can. And then he has, again, the fight of the year against Michael Conlan, which, okay, by not good with Michael Conlan, here's what I'll say. I think Michael Conlan is very skilled, and I think that he's talented. Like, you see the way that when he's southpaw, he is a southpaw, he changes levels. He'll dip, and he'll throw like a pretty long, he's got a deceptively long reach, Michael Conlan does, but he'll throw that left hand up top. He'll look low, dip, throw it. And he's good, like, but he's not durable. I think that's the rap sheet on Michael Conlan. I just feel like there's always a fighter that I liken his lack of durability to. Maurice Hooker. When you saw Maurice Hooker fighting, even before the stoppage loss against Virgil Ortiz, when he fought Jose Ramirez, you saw that his body and head, chin, he's just not built to take a lot of punches over the course of several rounds. I mean, and he got beat by Blair Cobbs more recently. I look at Maurice Hooker as maybe being a shot fighter by this point. But, and look, with that devastating knockout loss to Luis Alberto Lopez, Michael Conlan might be a shot fighter at this point. But I look at him as being a talented boxer, pretty talented puncher, just not durable enough to hang with the big boys, or at least like the elite guys. Like, I think that if Conlan fought Robeisy Ramirez, I think Robeisy Ramirez would probably get the stoppage. You know who Conlan needs to be fighting right now? Maybe Isaac Dogboe, who's about to be in another tough fight against Nick Ball. They're actually building Isaac Dogboe as the B-side against the up-and-comer Nick Ball. And I think Nick Ball is a strong betting favorite. I'm looking at that fight and I'm thinking, because Nick Ball is one of those, how Isaac Dogboe is a really short fighter. Nick Ball's a very short fighter too, but he's like a little powerhouse, fast powerhouse, very aggressive, pretty ferocious. But based on Isaac Dogboe's track record, I might go with the underdog in that one. And I might actually think about betting on Isaac Dogboe against Nick Ball. But I feel like that's the level that Michael Conlan, in the wake of getting knocked out again, should probably be fighting somebody on Isaac Dogboe's level. Not to say Isaac Dogboe is not good. I mean, he beat Joet Gonzalez at 126. Let's see. Oh, thank you, MAW. Subscribe and share, please, folks. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, MAW. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your work day too, man. Let's see. Oh, David Iser said Abdullah Mason sucks. He couldn't even stop that minus 3,000. Here's what I'll say about that fight with Abdullah Mason. So when you see guys on the come up, they'll flash brilliance, right? You'll see, okay, this guy's got remarkable hand speed. This other guy's a knockout artist, whatever. But then they run into a guy where, who knows why, they just don't look like themselves. They look pretty bad. Like, we could think of any fighter and see them in that fight where it wasn't against a champion or a former champion. It was just their next step along the way. And they look very human. They look very beatable. And I think that that's what we saw in Abdullah Mason's last fight. Now, we'll see what he looks like in a couple weeks. I forgot which undercard he's going to be fighting on. It's obviously going to be a top-ranked card. But I've got my eye on Abdullah Mason. I think that out of all of the fast, young punchers right now, I think Abdullah Mason, again, I don't know how well his boxing is going to develop. I don't know how good his chin is, how resilient he is, none of that. In terms of pure hand speed, he might be the fastest puncher out of all these young guys that we're looking at. Like blazing hand speed. But he's got a lot to prove, and it's gonna be a road. Like, I mean, we just saw Keyshawn Davis have that fight in his last fight, and which was overturned, right, because of his weed suspension. Keyshawn Davis is suspended for 6 months for testing positive for weed in Texas. I mean, that the rules are the rules, right? But we saw Keyshawn Davis look really bad late in his last fight. So, yeah, I think that with all of these up-and-comers, you see them tested in a way. I remember when Oscar De La Hoya was coming up, he fought John Molina. John Molina gave him a tough time, a very tough time. But yeah, if any of us name a really good fighter, I'll be able to name the guy who they ran into that wasn't a great fighter, but gave them a lot of issues. Like even David Benavidez, who was the guy who he had to fight twice and edge the decision in their second fight, got dropped against the guy. David Benavidez ran into one of those. Let's see. Ventru is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Sector MMA, thank you for coming through. Yeah, Spence Crawford, they haven't announced it. I think that everybody's waiting for what Canelo does next. And I think that what Canelo does next is going to be based on Demetrius Andrade, or should I say David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. So I look at Benavidez versus Andrade kind of at least influencing Canelo's move. And then you've got like 10 fighters who are either directly or indirectly waiting for Canelo's next move. That includes Terrence Crawford, therefore Errol Spence, therefore Jermall Charlo, therefore Tim Tszyu, therefore there are a lot of guys. I mean, obviously Andrade and David Benavidez. There are a lot of guys who are whose next move are somewhat influenced by or tethered to the result of Benavidez versus Andrade and what Canelo's decision is going to be after that. Yeah, it was Ronald Gavril, right? Upheaval 963 and Juan Mendoza. Both y'all got it. Yeah, Gavril gave Benavidez a lot of trouble. GWK said, assuming he still has to wait a while for Charlo. Now, you said Charlo versus instead of Charlo. I'm going to ask you, first of all, thank you for coming through. Are you saying it in the way that Andre says Charlo in the interviews? Because Andre's hilarious. If you haven't heard Andre's interview a couple weeks ago with Chris Mannix, give that a listen. He's one of my favorite interviews. It's messed up because the dude's got like a world of personality. He is a truly funny guy. And he's an outstanding boxer. For him not to have any sort of commercial success, obviously he hasn't been able to fight anybody of note. But it's just sad that he's in his mid-30s and more of the boxing world, more of the casual fans and just everybody hasn't gotten a good look at Demetrius Andrade. Because again, he legitimately has me laughing in some of his interviews. But yeah, he says Charlo. Okay. Yeah, he always says like, he's like, I've been trying to fight because he's got the East Coast thing going on. I've been trying to fight. I've been trying to fight this guy. I've been trying to get who was he trying to fight? Triple G in there. I was trying to get Jaime Munguia. He didn't want it. I trying to get Charlo in there. Like, yeah, but that's what I thought you were saying. But you said it was just a typo. That's funny. Let's see. Yeah, David Eister. Yeah, you're right. O'Shaquie Foster, list of dudes who do very good work but get little praise. But here's the thing. O'Shaquie Foster is still a lot younger. So he has a lot more time to make his name known, whereas, Demetrius Andrade is near the end of his career at this point. So Foster, one, he started late. Demetrius Andrade didn't start late. So he had to he had to accelerate the process in getting his career going. And O'Shaquie Foster picked up 2 losses earlier in his career. So that'll set you way back, right? Demetrius Andrade didn't lose to anybody. So, 2 losses early in his career. He's not a scintillating fighter. He's a skilled fighter and he keeps on getting better, but he's just going to have to get his the hard way, And you know what? I would love to see, because they're all on Matchroom, O'Shaquie Foster against the winner of Joe Cordina and Edward Vasquez, because then you've got a title unification. That would be a WBC and IBF 130-pound title unification fight. So that one's an easy one to make because they're all under Matchroom. So, and I'm sure, yeah, I hope that that's what we get next for both guys. But yeah, I want to thank you guys all for coming through to this chat. So we obviously discussed, Fury versus Ngannou a lot. And always feel free to mention different aspects of that fight, because I feel like even in the coming weeks and coming months, there's going to be more to unpack from, again, an unbelievably extraordinary night. That was one of the craziest things I have ever seen, ever seen in a boxing ring, is what we got between Fury and Ngannou. But David actually said, what do I think about that dude that Robeisy Ramirez is set for to fight December? Dangerous fighter, yeah, and that's another. His name isn't coming to me, but look, I'm gonna see how he adapts to Robeisy Ramirez's style, because it's weird with Robeisy Ramirez, because he lost like his first professional fight, but that just made him accelerate, and basically he jumped right into the fire and started fighting quality fighters pretty early. Remember when he knocked out Abraham Nova? That was like a prospect versus prospect, let's see what happens type of fight, and he knocked Abraham Nova out. So I'm gonna do a deeper dive, and I'm obviously gonna do a full preview on that Robeisy Ramirez title defense. But this is another one of those guys who you just have to keep a close eye on because of the power and the tenacity that he brings. So yeah, I'm gonna do a more of a closer analysis on that opponent, and then have more to say about that fight. But it's not a soft touch. I don't look at this as being a gimme fight for Robeisy Ramirez. Let's see. An upset. I think Robeisy would, at the end of the day, would have too much craft. That's just my gut instinct. But as I do a little bit more analysis, I might even flip flop on that one. I was almost gonna flip flop on O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez. I came that close, but I ended up taking Foster, but not by knockout. Damn sure not by 12th round knockout. By the way, props to Amanda Serrano and Danila Ramos for going 12 rounds, 3 minutes each round. It was pretty inspiring to see that, that line of amateur women boxers who were holding Amanda Serrano's belt in the air as Amanda Serrano was entering the ring. That was something special. And, no, she doesn't get enough exposure. She's getting a lot more exposure, partially thanks to Jake Paul, played a big role in that. But it's going to be interesting to see if the WBC ever gets on board, because Mauricio Suleiman didn't sanction the WBC, didn't sanction this fight, this 12-round, 3-minute rounds fight between Amanda Serrano and Danila Ramos. But they went the full 12 rounds. So there you go. It's going to be interesting to see if more elite female boxers adopt 12 minutes versus 10 rounds, 2 minutes, because you do get the sense that a lot of fights would be different if there was that third minute of each round, especially even if they go to 10 3-minute rounds and you don't want to give 12 minutes yet, even if it has to be like the in-between point, I'd be okay with that. But that third minute, those 2-minute rounds are just throw as many punches as you can in 2 rounds or in 2 minutes, because you're not going to burn out in those 2 minutes. So throw more punches. You see less strategy, less skill showcasing. That would change with 3-minute rounds, even if it's a 10-rounder and not a 12. Yeah, Upheaval 963. That's one of the better fights in the upcoming calendar. Bam Rodriguez versus Sonny Edwards. I can't wait to break that one down. Gut instinct, I'm going Bam Rodriguez, but Sonny Edwards is a very good boxer, and who knows? Here's the thing. I remember thinking that Regis Prograis was going to beat Josh Taylor when they were having that finals in the World Boxing Super Series, and Josh, I had seen Josh Taylor beat Ryan Martin, Ivan Baranchyk, Victor Postal. I knew that Josh Taylor was very good. I just thought that Regis Prograis was going to be better, and then Josh Taylor totally, he surprised me. He exceeded my expectations. Sonny Edwards has a chance at blowing a lot of people's minds against the very hyped, the red hot, a little less hot in his last couple fights, but the pretty damn hot Bam Rodriguez. Huge opportunity for Sonny Edwards. Big opportunity for Bam too. Let's see. Murataya fights Diego Torres this weekend as well, as does Efe Ajagba versus Joe Goodall. Joe Goodall is the last guy who beat Stephen Shaw. Remember Stephen Shaw had fought F.A. Ajagba a couple fights ago. It was a boring fight where Ajagba actually won with his jab. Well, the guy who just stopped Stephen Shaw, Joe Goodall, is going to be F.A. Ajagba's opponent this weekend as well. And I think Ilunga Jr. Makabu has his first fight since losing his title to Badu Jack. This was supposed to be on a Adrian Broner undercard, but the Adrian Broner fight was canceled. But I think Makabu is still fighting on Fight TV this weekend. Yeah, Murataya Torres, that is going to be a good fight. LTAMTC, yo, thank you for coming through. Yeah, Murataya is the guy who just stopped Nakathila. Jeremiah Nakathila is the guy who kind of gave Shakur Stevenson an interesting fight. I'll say that Shakur Stevenson respected Nakathila's power. So Nakathila did that, and he stopped Miguel Berchelt after Miguel Berchelt got knocked out by Oscar Valdez. So Nakathila was coming in kind of like, hey, man, keep your eye on Nakathila when he fought Murataya, and Murataya stopped Nakathila. So Murataya fights this coming weekend as well. Oh, okay. So we're going to see how overrated or not overrated Shakur Stevenson is, because he's going to have a tough opponent in Edwin De Los Santos. I'm really looking forward to that fight. I don't look at Shakur Stevenson as being overrated. I just think that when you perform in the way that he did against Oscar Valdez, you've already done something where, you know, you could lose your next fight. Look, maybe overrated in the sense where people are already ready to crown him like a top 3 pound for pound fighter in the sport. But in terms of the eyeball test, in terms of what we've seen up to this point, including his last stoppage win over Yoshino, who knocked out Nakatani, and Nakatani might be a shot fighter by this point as well. But Brendan Jackson is in the house. Thank you for coming through. But yeah, Shakur Stevenson, like, he's showing us a lot. He dominated Joet Gonzalez, more or less. He beat Nakathila, didn't dominate, but he beat Nakathila. He beat Oscar Valdez pretty handily. He's beaten Robson Conceição, who's another good fighter. He's beaten a lot of guys by this point, you know? Yes, I do think that Edwin De Los Santos can pull off the upset against Shakur Stevenson. I'm going to do a deeper dive before I decide on whether he will. Right now, obviously, I would favor Shakur Stevenson. But, you know, Edwin De Los Santos, he puts his punches together very well-timed, fast punches, hard punches. We obviously saw him stop Jose Valenzuela. We saw him dominate, and I mean dominate, Joseph Adorno, like 11 rounds to 1 type of fight. Or I'm sorry, that would be like 9 rounds to 1. I think it was a 10-rounder. But Edwin De Los Santos is looking very good. This could be a trap fight for Shakur Stevenson. And obviously, the fight was made after the fight against Frank Martin fell apart. But yeah, Edwin De Los Santos, I would say that Oscar Valdez has the best resume and is the most established, most esteemed fighter that Shakur Stevenson has fought to date. But Edwin De Los Santos might be the most talented fighter. I don't know. I have to think about that. But he's definitely, in my view, in the top 2 in terms of the talented fighters that Shakur Stevenson has fought. That includes Jamel Herring, who Shakur Stevenson whooped on early and then stopped late, even though Herring did better in the early middle rounds and then got stopped later. LTAMTC says that Ngannou would beat Wilder. There's a possibility. We were talking about that earlier. I do think that I want to see Ngannou, like a lot of people now who didn't want to see Ngannou fighting earlier. And look, I didn't think it was going to be competitive. I didn't. I got it way wrong. I don't think anybody got that one right, especially in the way that Ngannou was competitive. But yes, he does have a good chance, or at least a decent chance, at beating Deontay Wilder. I see what you're saying, David Eister, about Jamel Herring. I mean, Jamel Herring was pretty old too, but didn't he lose to was it Lamont Roach? He lost to a couple guys earlier in his career. I didn't look at him as being a super highly esteemed fighter. I thought that he beat the right guys at the right time, especially with his win over Carl Frampton. Yeah, I like Jamel Herring as a person. He seems like a quality guy. He kind of needs to, he's getting better as a commentator. I hear him on some of those top rank calls for the lesser fights, like he did the Luis Alberto Lopez versus Michael Conlan fight. He's got like a slight stutter, and look, he's getting better with his commentary. Sometimes he says too many things that are like, duh, like a little bit obvious, but I feel like there's like a trajectory. Like right now, I say he's around the same level as Gabriel Rosado. You hear Gabe Rosado on some of the DAZN calls. In fact, he was on that O'Shaquie Foster versus Rocky Hernandez call. I would say Jamel Herring is there. He's not at the Timothy Bradley or Andre Ward. And what I mean is the fighter doing the commentary. Because I look at 3 roles in boxing commentary. You've got the play-by-play guy, the Tessitore, the Jim Lampley, the Mauro Ranallo, and so forth, right? Then Bernardo Osuna on some of the smaller top rank cards. And then you've got the fighter, the former fighter, the Timothy Bradley, the Roy Jones, the Andre Ward, sometimes Bernard Hopkins, back in the day, George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, and on and on. And sometimes you could swap the fighter with a former trainer, but then sometimes you could do trainer and former fighter, like some of the PBC cards would have Joe Goosen and Lennox Lewis, right? And then you've got the analyst. The analyst is usually the Larry Merchant, the Max Kellerman, the Al Bernstein, somebody like that. Even though I don't think that they truly have that on the top rank side, at least because the top rank, they would have the two, before they let go of Andre Ward, they had 2 boxers, Ward and Bradley. But yeah, in terms of the fighters converting to that former fighter, now I'm an analyst role, Jamel Herring is still early in his development. I'll say it like that. He has his moments though. Yeah, LTAMTC, HBO and Showtime were the pinnacle, even though I still look at it as being HBO A or HBO number 1 and Showtime 1A. I just do. I really do. Even though Showtime has some of the biggest fights of all time, I look at just the presentation, the production, the commentary, just the teams, everything that went into the HBO production as being, it's that emoji. It's that emoji. It's the creme de la creme. Yeah, David Iser, the odds for Navarrete Conceição are wide. And I think that that's because of Navarrete's recent performance over Oscar Valdez and the fact that we have now seen Robson Conceição, at least we've seen him lose twice, including getting the decision loss, close fight. Some thought it was controversial, against Oscar Valdez right after Oscar Valdez tested positive for the PEDs and they still put the fight on. Not only was he not stripped, not only was he not suspended, but they let the fight go. Damn. That was egregious in my book. But yeah, we've seen Conceição fight Oscar Valdez, did well early in the fight in the first few rounds, and then we saw him lose to Shakur Stevenson. So I think that the public is looking at, Navarrete as being like man, this guy's just unbelievable, and saying, yeah, he's probably going to beat Robson Conceição, especially because Conceição is kind of like I'm not going to open up until you come at me and I'll counterpunch and use some quick, 1 punch, 2 punches at a time. Whereas, well, we all know what Navarrete does. So style-wise, it looks like it's going to be Navarrete's fight at the end of the day, doesn't it? Yeah, Conceição can catch him, but I think that it's more likely that Navarrete ends up overwhelming him. And yeah, Liam Wilson, look, I thought Navarrete was about to get knocked out against Liam Wilson. Yeah, you're right. LTAMTC, Jim Lampley did have some of the most iconic calls. I get a little sad anytime I think of HBO boxing. You know what I mean? It's just, there's just nothing like it in the boxing ecosystem right now. Nothing close to it. Nothing close to it. That's how good it was. Nothing close to it, really. But yeah, I want to thank you guys once again for coming through. By the way, what's up with Alicia Bumgarner? I know that on Twitter she's saying that she's cooperating, is being investigated. The truth is going to come to light. But what the hell? Is she quietly serving a suspension and we just don't know it? I just haven't heard the Dan Rayfields, the Mike Coppingers, and so forth break any news about what they're going to do about Alicia Bumgarner testing positive. I just haven't heard anything lately about it. I'm going to keep my eye open for some news about Alicia Bumgarner, though. Oh, Canelo better not fight Munguia next. Hell no. Hell no. Don't reward bad behavior. Don't reward Munguia for not fighting anybody except for Sergey Derevianchenko. I give that to him. And that was a hell of a tough fight, too. But no, don't do that. Don't do that. Make Munguia at least beat a Edgar Berlanga before he gets that type of an opportunity. That would be scheduling malpractice if Canelo goes that route. And Canelo has to know that the boxing world would hate it and he would get criticized sorely if he ends up fighting Munguia next. I thought he edged it against Derevianchenko. Close fight, got hurt several times against Derevianchenko, but he dropped him late, and I thought that he rallied back. I thought he rallied pretty strong in the last few rounds against Derevianchenko. But it was really one of those, it could go either way type of fights. I agree. I think that Munguia, I would favor Munguia over Berlanga at this point. Even though, I have to say, yes, his last few wins have been via decision after winning the first 16 via first round knockout, which is still crazy to think about. 16 first round knockouts. And then what? Now we're at 5 decision wins in a row. That's just one of the weirdest career arcs I've ever seen. But I would favor Munguia against Edgar Berlanga, even though I actually, ironically, think that Berlanga's actually becoming he's for a first round knockout artist as he was built early in his career. I think that he's actually a little bit, maybe a little more technical than Jaime Munguia, maybe. But Munguia just throws so many punches, so much firepower. That's the fight I want to see. I really do want to see Munguia versus Berlanga. But yeah, I want to pick this. So check it out. I'm gonna be in Tennessee in a few days, and I don't know if I'm gonna do a live chat on Tuesday, but I want to. I'll plan on doing it. I just won't have a lot of the assets that I normally do it with. I probably won't have the camera with me. Definitely won't have this desktop and the monitors with me. So if I do it, it would be old school style off the phone. But I might do a live chat. I'll let y'all know. But if I don't do a live chat next week, I'll still do like a news related video where it's not like a total one fight preview, but it would be covering like a range of topics like we're doing right now. And I would use that to substitute for a live chat next week. And then I would pick the live chat back up the following week. What else? There was something else I wanted to mention before we close out. Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna come to me though. But yeah, let's see. Oh, I'm gonna start doing historical fights and kind of looking through more of the history of boxing and doing a lot of stops along the boxing timeline. One fight that I was thinking about doing was first, and it doesn't make any sense. And like, why would you do this one first? But I was thinking about doing it because I was just watching an old fight. Oh, I always watch old fights. Miguel Cotto versus Ricardo Torres. I'm going to do more just kind of recaps and where the boxing conversation was going into the fight. So providing background, getting into the fight itself and what it meant for each fighter and how it kind of changed the course of boxing. So yeah, Miguel Cotto versus Ricardo Torres. I was thinking of making that my first kind of like historical. I don't even know what to call it just yet, but I'm going to start doing those, especially in the slower boxing weeks where we don't have like a marquee fight. I'll still do the preview, even if we have like a B-level fight at best, but I do want to start sprinkling some historical content and also just covering like one division at a time. That's another thing I want to do. Just picking a division, 140, 130, and doing either a live chat or a video about the state of that particular division. I really want to start doing that. But yeah, thank you guys once again. LTAMTC, thank you. MAW, David Eister. Heck yeah. Brendan Jackson. GWK. Upheaval 963. Juan Mendoza. Sector MMA. Karma Serene. Adari Pennant. Yeah, thank you guys once again for joining the live chat again. Jay Foreman. Yeah, thank you. Edward Espinoza. Again, if I don't do the live chat next week, I'll do it the following week, but I'll definitely be hitting y'all with some content, at least a couple of videos over the next, few days and such. And a few boxing shorts too, that just kind of touch on a breaking news item. I'm going to do a few shorts in the coming days as well as the weekend fight preview, the quick one. EK, yeah, thank you for coming through. Oh, yeah. Hit the like. Thanks again, Jay Foreman. Yeah, until next time, guys, I'm Woog. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.